Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 4th December 2020. In this video, we'll be discussing about the personal choices and the fundamental rights and Allahabad court judgment in the case of Salamat Ansari. How it is a celebration of the constitution's most cherished values. In the second article, we'll be talking about NRI voting. So, Allahabad High Court has declared that religious conversions, even when made solely for the purpose of a marriage, is a valid exercise of a personal liberty of a person. So, this is declared in a case called the Salamat Ansari case. This is a very important constitutional judgment. This is important in the context of the ordinance to deal with unlawful religious conversions that Uttar Pradesh government has recently come up with. There was a lot of opposition for this particular law by the Uttar Pradesh government, and several Supreme Court judgments are also reiterating the same stance that the opponents are taking. So, if you have to understand what is the importance of this ordinance, let us have a look at the key points in this ordinance. So it makes religious conversion for a marriage a non-bailable offense. Therefore, the onus will be on the defendant to prove that conversion was not for marriage. Secondly, the notice period to the district magistrate for the religious conversion is 2 months. In case of conversion done by women for the sole purpose of a marriage, the marriage would be declared null and void. Violation of the provisions of the law would invite a jail term of not less than 1 year, extendable up to 5 years. And there is also a fine of 15,000 rupees. So, if a minor woman or a woman from the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe converts, the jail term would be a minimum of 3 years and it could be extended to 10 years with a fine of 25,000 rupees. So, this is the basic framework of this particular ordinance. Now, let us have a look at the Supreme Court judgments on marriage and conversion. The Supreme Court, in its various judgments, had held that faith, the state, and the courts have no jurisdiction over an adult's absolute right to choose a life partner. Because this is intricately a part of Article 21, right to life. Every person has a right to determine how he or she has to live. India is a free and democratic country, and any interference of the state in an adult's right to love and marry has a chilling effect on freedoms. Reiterating the same stance, there are various Supreme Court judgments. Let us have a look at them one by one. If you take a look at the Hadia judgment that came out in 2017, the court has declared that matters of dress, food, ideology, of love and partnership are within the central aspect of a person's identity. So we cannot dictate terms on what should constitute our identity. The second important statement or second important judgment in this case is the Puttaswamy judgment with respect to privacy that came out in 2017. So, if you take a look at the perspective towards marriage, it denotes an autonomy of the individual and its ability to make decisions in vital matters that concerns his life. It's a very personal matter. So, it comes under the Article 21 through this privacy judgment also. Similarly, there is this Lata Singh case of 1994. The apex court held that India is going through a transformational period where constitution will remain strong only if we accept the plurality and diversity of our culture. So this marks the phase of transformative constitutionalism by the Supreme Court. So this is a period where instead of parochial identities, constitutional morality came to the forefront. Similarly, even in the Soni Jerry case of 2018 and the latest one being Salamat Ansari and Priyanka Kharwar case of Allahabad High Court in 2020, all of this declared that dictating terms with respect to marriage is against the fundamental rights. Thus, the government implementing such laws needs to ensure that these do not curb one's fundamental rights or even hamper the national integration. Instead, these laws need to strike a balance between freedoms and malified conversions. So, we have to work towards containing these malified conversions rather than putting restraints on persons' personal preferences. So, that is the gist of this article. The second article, How NRIs Could Vote by Post, is taken from the Indian Express, and this is regarding how a recent proposal from the Election Commission to the Law Ministry is shaping up. So, if you take a look at NRIs, who happen to be the largest diaspora, if you take a look at the syllabus given in the General Studies Paper 2, that is GS2, Indian diaspora is one such important component. Now we have the highest amount or the largest group of diaspora. If you take into comparison with any country, Indian diaspora is the largest across the world. Because they are living in some other countries, even though they are related to our country, during elections they are not in a position to give their vote. So the government proposed that there should be a facility for NRIs to vote through postal ballots. Now, if the proposal is cleared, this article is trying to explain how the system is going to work. Recently, Election Commission has approached the Law Ministry stating that it has received representations from a lot of NRIs expressing their interest in voting in Indian elections. This is very important because NRIs, due to their work commitments or any other reason, or even financial reasons, it is very expensive for them to come to India just to vote. So, if there is a provision of postal ballot, they can engage in a very meaningful way in the democracy of our country. There are upcoming elections next year in Assam, West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, and some other places. In all these places, Election Commission has given a go ahead, or it has expressed its technical readiness to roll out what is called the electronically transmitted postal ballot system, or ETPBS. So if an NRI wants to vote, she has to come in person and vote after showing her passport. She can only vote in person and will have to produce her passport in original at the polling station for establishing an identity as per election law. Now, voting rights for NRIs were introduced only in 2011. Before that, it was not there. Through an amendment to the Representation of People's Act 1950. Please note, it is 1950. As far as the procedures and processes which are concerning elections are concerned, it is the Representation of People's Act 1950, not RPA 1951. Please note this point. Recently, in the context of the pandemic, Law Ministry has actually reduced the age limit for senior citizens who opt for postal ballot in the Lok Sabha and Assembly elections. Now, the voters aged above 65 years or a COVID 19 suspect can opt for a postal ballot. Earlier in 2019, also, the Law Ministry amended the conduct of election rules to allow persons with disabilities and who are 80 years or above to opt for postal ballot. You have to understand that in this particular case, Law Ministry is the nodal agency to amend the rules in this case. Election commissioners don't have any power in their ambit to change these laws. They can only approach the Law Ministry seeking a particular change in the law. The practical challenge expressed by the Ministry of External Affairs is the fact that diplomatic missions across all the countries don't have the logistic support to handle such a large number of overseas electors, and that they would have to seek the permission of the host country for organizing any such activity. This will be difficult in non democratic countries. Another option that was considered last year during the 2019 general election was the issue of proxy voting. So this is not related to proxy voting, this is just related to postal ballots. In this context, it is just enough to amend the Conduct of Election Rules 1961, and this does not require Parliament's approval directly. It can be an executive action if the government decides to extend this facility of postal ballots to the NRIs. So that is the gist of this article.